We are live.
Okay,
We
shall
can
we
go
start?
ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we are. We can. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Beyond 2020, 25 happening careers in accounting and finance welcomes you all to a webinar on how to prepare for a global career. This is the second webinar of our 5 upcoming webinar series. The first one was how about a career in forensic accounting and fraud examination. Joining us today is an expert and an anchor who will be conducting this session. Our expert today is a qualified chartered accountant from the 2004 batch. He is also an alumnus from IIM-Ahmedabad. He has done his articleship from Ernst& Young. He has worked for Unilever. He has worked for ICICI Prudential. And currently, he's working as a senior investment management with Pictet Asset Management. Participants, please welcome our expert for today's webinar, CA Venkatesh Sanjeevi, with a hi in your chat box. Venkatesh, we welcome you to this webinar session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
You're welcome. So the anchor for today's event need not have any introduction as he's well known with his name. He's a qualified chartered accountant, a practicing chartered accountant as well, an author, public speaker, and trainer. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome our anchor for today's session, CAV Pattabhi Ram. Pattabhi Ram, sir, please welcome to the session.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Can we remove that picture and have all of us on the screen?
Let us transfer the control to Pattabhi Ram.
Good afternoon, Venkatesh, and good afternoon to people in the UK. Good morning to all of you who have logged in from the US, and good evening to people in the Middle East and in India. It's wonderful to have Venkatesh with us today. Incidentally, also an alumni of Prime, and it all makes us so proud that someone in our midst has gone on to become a well-known fund manager.
Thank you, sir, for this. And it's been 20 years since I first met you at Prime Academy, and it's great to be part of this event. And thanks for inviting me here.
Thanks, Venkatesh. I think without much ado, we'll get started. Venkatesh, we have lots of young, bright, chartered accountants who I'm sure beginning today will look up to you as a role model in terms of trying to make a career abroad or trying to make a global career. I want you to tell them, you can take as much time as you like, but not more than 2 minutes to answer a question. What is a global career?
Great. I think that's a good starting point for this discussion. Global career is not a scientific term or anything of that sort, which has a clear definition. But generally, what it means is working for an organization where you have career opportunities in, say, different parts of the world, where, let's say, people from different parts of the world work together and you're exposed to multiple cultures, multiple geographies. So companies over time are becoming more and more global in terms of their businesses. So careers also naturally need to go the similar global path. In terms of what actually is a global career, this has also changed over time and in terms of the path towards a global career. Let's say 20, 30 years ago, it used to be the typical path used to be a person from India would go to the US, usually the largest market for such jobs. Do a post-graduation or do a PhD and work for a global firm there. And there's also the big pool of people joining multinational companies in India itself. Firms like Unilever have been doing this for many decades. Firms like Citibank, Bank of America have been doing it for maybe 20 years or so. You join these big companies in India, and over time you keep moving to different geographies within that same organization. And of late, the new path is also Indian multinationals. And Indian companies are becoming big and buying businesses around the world. Say the Tata Group, or let's say the Mahindras, which have businesses like Jaguar in the Tata Group. So you can join these companies in India itself, and eventually find a way to work in different parts of the world internally. So I think there are multiple forms of global career.
Yeah. Um, just for the benefit of our audience, what we are going to do today with the help of Venkatesh is to try and answer a few questions. Like, for instance, if you were looking for a career which takes you places, what should you do? If you did not know where to start, what should you now do? What would be the challenges if you choose not to work A, in whichever city you belong to in Chennai, or choose not to work in India but go abroad? What are the kind of cultural fitments that you'll have to practice as you try to seek a career internationally? That's going to be the sum and substance of our conversation with Venkatesh. Venkatesh, did you originally think when you joined Unilever that you will go to other parts of the world and work?
No, I mean, if I had known that my career would pan out this particular way, and it is not possible to guess how it's going to pan out. But the point is, I was open to opportunities, and I knew that when I joined Unilever, there was a chance to work in different parts of the world. Although I didn't really move here through Unilever, but I guess once you get into some sort of a global sort of career path in India or elsewhere, you should be aware that opportunities will come up anywhere and any point of time, and if you're keen, just follow them.
All right. Just a couple of questions. One is a little personal, so you can choose to answer or choose not to answer. What is it that you actually made you leave such a standout company like Unilever and then move on to ICICI Prudential Asset Management Company?
Okay, I mean that happened more than 12, 13 years ago when I moved out from Unilever. So I mean, obviously Unilever is a great company, and especially for a person who wants to build a career in a general management role, there are so many different roles there to pursue that particular line, and it gives you multiple options. But I realized my interest level, my passion was probably in the capital market side of the world, and that's when I made a shift to the capital markets business. And yeah, I'm happy with. Ultimately, you need to enjoy the work you're doing, and I thought capital markets was my calling, and hence I moved here.
There was a time, at least long years ago, when I qualified from the CA Institute, and even much later, when fresh young CAs chose to look A to the Middle East or to Australia, New Zealand, in order to make a career. Do you think that today we must, if we to use your word, the global career, should we today consciously plan for one? And if we want to plan for one, what is it that we must do? What should be the starting point?
So I think it's a personal choice whether you want to be in India or be outside India. And what I can tell you is over the last maybe 15, 20 years, the pros for being in India has only increased because India is growing faster. There are a lot more variety of things to do in India. And so those kind of things are better. So first point is it's a personal choice whether you want to continue in India or you want to work outside India, and also an option of working outside India for a few years and then come back to India. That's also one pretty common option. But if you decide that you have to go outside India, there are a few steps I would think. Firstly, CA qualification itself is fairly well recognized in some parts of the world, as you mentioned, Middle East, perhaps maybe Australia as well. But maybe in the UK or in the US, it's not as well recognized as I would say an additional qualification would be in terms of maybe a CFA or an MBA. So maybe a person may want to add an additional qualification in that line. Again, depends on what you really want to do. An investment role could need a CFA. An MBA from India or even an MBA from abroad could help. So that is one a person should pursue. And second route is, of course, this Indian multinational sort of route when you join these large companies in India and spend some time there. And at some point of time, you could have a conversation with your manager saying that, I've spent so many years here. I would like to build an experience in this particular project in this particular geography, why don't you send me there? And those options also open up, and companies are generally flexible with that. And also, I think it's very important to build your networks. It's in today's world with things like LinkedIn and all the social networks, you can find out people who are in a similar line in different parts of the world, and it's good to be in touch with them and understand what can be done to pursue a global option.
So if I can summarize what you said, you're saying that A, try to pick up a qualification other than chartered accountancy, in addition to chartered accountancy, a qualification that is probably well recognized in that country or globally. And two is network with people, LinkedIn preferably, so that you get to know what opportunities are available. Would that be broadly right?
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that as a CA there are no opportunities. I'm just saying that the probability would increase with a more globally recognized. So that's the option.
Okay, I have one more question, and after that, Ibrahim will make some observations. Um, this is a very tricky question. At least it's a tricky statement. And you have been in the UK for 5 years, so I'm being very conscious when I ask you this question. Living in a country that is not India, is there a feeling that maybe you are a B class citizen there, a second class citizen there? Is that a feeling that an expat would get at any point in time? Is there some preparedness for which one should do when one goes there?
Right. I think the term a second class citizen is a strong sort of term, but I mean, it's surely not home. That's for sure, right? But what does it mean? I mean, there are, let's say, do people get confused between you and somebody else from India? Yes. I mean, in my office, there are two ladies who look similar, and for our eyes, we know who's who. But for European eyes, they get confused between the two of them. And it's quite irritating for them.
No,
But
not that, Venkatesh, not that.
So,
I can understand. So between two British, we might have confusion. I'm not asking that. If there are, at some particular point in time, do you get to feel, hey, if I was in India, I would have possibly been treated better?
yeah.
My only reason for asking that is that the young boys and girls who today want to make a career internationally, whether they should get ready to accept that as a way of life. That's my limited.
Yeah, we're just coming to that. I'm just trying to say that there are some compromises which you will have to do in terms of these kind of things. But does it get to the point when you're treated badly? No, at least I've not come across anything of that sort in both in the office or outside. Maybe it's because London is a very cosmopolitan city with people from all over the world here. Maybe it is not so cosmopolitan in, let's say, mainland Europe or maybe heartland of America or things like that. And one more thing we should recognize is in today's world, diversity and inclusion is a very, very strong topic across organizations. So no good organization, I would say, can afford to discriminate on the basis of long list of things, including country of origin. So I don't think those kind of things would happen blatantly. And to some extent, even in India, there is there are things like stereotyping which happens. So that way, it's not too different, I would think.
Yeah,
and this is an example in London. Yeah.
I understand that. In fact, a quick thought that came to my mind was that I don't know whether it's true now because I'm not following that very closely. At least a few years back, there were 6 or 7 non-Englishmen playing the English cricket team. Over to you, Ibrahim.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Audience, hope you are enjoying the conversation between Pattabhi and our expert, Venkatesh. We just would like to draw your attention to the upcoming webinars. Beyond 2020 is an initiative of 8 professionals led by Pattabhi Ram. So we are organizing this webinar series to bring awareness to the target audience who are basically students from accounting fraternity or newly qualified accountants or somebody who has been in the industry and the profession for quite some time and who's looking to change gear or shift his career just to ignite some passion in life. So this webinar series will talk about an introduction of a career, about the scope of a career, skills, education, paycheck, and the road ahead. So there are three upcoming webinars. The first one is scheduled on 20th of May at 6 p.m., the second on 29th of May, and the third and 30th of May on topics like enterprise risk management, equity research, and business process outsourcing. So we have in here experts in the industry who will be giving very exclusive insights and experience, and they will be speaking their wisdom out to all of us. So hope you will be enjoying the upcoming sessions as well. And you may please kindly register on the link which is given below, and you may please follow us on our social media platforms with the hashtag Beyond 2020 Careers. Thank you. Sir, can I hand over the control
Yeah,
to you?
yeah, yeah. You can remove that. Yeah. The subsequent webinars will strictly follow the pattern of introduction, scope, skills, roadhead, payback. Today's will not follow that for obvious reasons. Uh, Venkatesh, coming back to this, what are the typical challenges that you face when you work there? Is the work culture very different from how it was in ICICI Pru AMC in India?
Yeah, I think it is quite different. There's no two ways about it. And again, work culture is a very broad term. The culture is driven from the top of the company, and each company, depending on where they're from and who's running it, could have a different culture. What I've generally seen is European firms in London are a bit more laid back compared to, let's say, the US firms in London.
Just 1 second, Venkatesh. Yours is a European or a US firm?
Mine is a European firm. So, I mean, the difference is, I think, there's a focus on preservation, the focus on sustainability. My firm has been around for more than 200 years. So the thought process.
200 years.
Yeah, so it's seen multiple cycles and multiple, ups and downs in the economy. It's an unlisted firm, it's a partnership firm. So I think the focus is then on long-term thinking, not for the next quarter and next year's growth. It's probably next many years' growth. While a lot of let's say US firms could have a lot more growth mindset, which follows down into the culture of employees working longer, working harder, trying to reach their targets. So that's a very broad thing, a broad definition. But coming to a bit more specifically into organization, yeah, I mean, initially it takes a while to get used to the way of work in terms of conversations, courtesies, in terms of the accent, very basic things. It took me a few weeks to understand the accent, and vice versa. I mean, when I feel that I'm talking in a very normal and a particularly understandable way, the other person may find it difficult to understand because they're not used to this accent. So you typically need to slow down. You need to focus on a few shorter sentences, and other thing is remembering names. You come across names which you had never heard of before. And again, exactly same for someone to hear a name like Venkatesh. They struggle to remember and to keep track. So these kind of basic things take a few weeks or maybe a few months to get used to it. I think, but beyond that, there is also in India, I think it is okay to be more loud. It's okay to be more, how do I say, show that we are in control, or you can afford to say a few loose statements. Here we need to be a lot more cautious, and need to be treating all employees very equally and very fairly. And I think this hierarchy thing may get a bit loose in India, where a boss can get away with a lot of things, but those kind of things are more subtle and more careful in this culture. So it takes a few weeks and few months, but it's not something that is impossible to adjust to.
What are the other cultural issues that someone who wants to make a career should be careful about?
Well,
maybe how he behaves in public.
Yeah, I mean, I think one big thing is that what I've noticed here is a lot of conversations are not generally work specific. In India, you could talk to everyone in office just about this particular work-related item, but here everyone's got something other outside of work. You follow a particular team, you in football, or you have an activity, maybe cycling or sailing or things like that, and a lot of conversations revolve around this hobby. And I think it's useful to build something like that outside of your work, where which is useful for your networking and within the company as well. So I think that was one which I realized after moving here.
Tell us, what is your hobby? What is the one that you are now practicing there?
It's very easy, sir, to guess. Default for Indian is cricket. I'm considered the only person in my team who's passionate about cricket, despite a few other English men around here. But football, if football is on a scale of 0 to 10, if football is 10, cricket is probably 2 or 3 for the normal British person here. So it's easy to follow cricket. Nobody else is following it really.
Okay, that's interesting. Are there any specific guidelines that you would want to give to a person who consciously says, I must work abroad, only then I have arrived? When you're young, you have all those ideas. Yeah. So are there any conscious steps that we can offer them?
Yeah, I think that notion of I must work abroad should be rethought. I think people should rethink about, is it really necessary in today's day and age, when I see a lot of people here are looking to get experience in India or any other emerging market, because that's the place where there is growth. And so maybe it's not, the be all end all of thing that you need to work outside. But if you decide to work outside, I think there are definitely merits in experiencing this, not just from a career perspective, but also as a life perspective with the mix of everything else around it. So I think if that is clear, it goes back to the few things I mentioned earlier. Try and study a different, maybe one more additional qualification or certification, and do look for people who can help you out.
While what I'm going to ask you next may or may not square up with England, but in other countries, if you think you could answer that, is it good to know another language beyond English, beyond Hindi?
Yeah, again, in England doesn't matter. In US it won't. Australia it won't. But if you're working in mainland Europe, it does. And also, let's say my own firm, which is actually a Geneva headquartered firm, it is generally helpful if you know French as well, even though you're working in London, because there is a lot of interaction between the head office and these officers. And what I've seen is people who can speak French are able to get those networks built easier. So some cases it is useful to have an additional language, but in most countries and most cities where Indians generally work in, it doesn't really matter too much.
So what do you do during the weekends? Do you work long hours? I do know you said a little bit about laid back company, but otherwise, do you guys take great pride in saying, I come home at 11 in the night, at 7 in the morning, work 6 days a week? Great sense of pride that many people in India have.
Okay, I didn't mean laid back in a negative way. I meant laid back in a positive way, because we are very efficient and get work done by 6 o'clock every day. Despite taking a 2-hour break for lunch in between, we're still efficient.
2-hour break, okay.
No, just that was supposed to be a joke anyway. No, but I think weekends are no work for sure in terms of coming into office. There would be times when you would check your emails at home and respond to them if something comes up urgently. But I think what I would do on weekends needs to be divided maybe 3 categories: pre-kids, post-kids, pre-COVID, and post-COVID. Of course, post-COVID is at home and really sitting at home and not really venturing out much. God knows how long. But the good times, the time, let's say 2 or 3 years earlier, when there was summer. London, the good thing is there are 4 seasons and different things can be done in each season. Summer is typically an outdoor sport where you can participate in cricket or.
How hot is summer?
There are a few days it can go up to 34, 35 as well, but typical summer is today's 25, 26 degrees. And, that's typical summer
Right
is.
now, what is it in Fahrenheit? 945. 90, is it? Approximately. Okay. All right. All
Right.
right. You were talking about COVID. I actually want, before you answer the question, first of all, I don't know whether I'm being politically right. I must actually thank COVID because without that, we would have never, ever got you to reach all of these people here. But that apart, once mankind wins its battle, inevitable victory over the the disease or the virus, do you think the job opportunities for chartered accountants, because that's what our audience today largely is, would you think that the job opportunities for chartered accountants will dramatically change to the worse abroad?
For the worse.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if CAs, if things change for the worse in terms of the economy being
No,
weaker.
I'm thinking in terms of our people beginning to build uh, more conscious geographical boundaries, saying that, meaning reversal of globalization in that sense. Will that happen?
Well, in fact, that was probably an issue pre-COVID, and post-COVID, the boundaries are getting to be less and less relevant if people can sit in different countries and work.
Ah, yeah.
Pre-COVID, with different large countries like US and all these issues of trying to bring jobs back, and
Correct.
that probably could have been an issue. But what I'm noticing now is I came across this article a few days ago about this couple who lives in San Francisco has now decided to move to Hawaii because the living cost is a fraction of San Francisco, and you can get the same work done.
I'm sorry, you'll have to tell me where is Hawaii. My geography is very bad.
It's far away from the mainland America and in islands in
West Indies, by any chance?
tropical paradise. No, the other side,
Okay.
in the Pacific. So, and you don't need to be close to the office when you can get work done efficiently nowadays. The question is, how long will this trend continue? At some point, if the inevitable battle against the virus is won, will people go back to their old ways of coming into office or not? I mean, companies like Google and Facebook have spent millions, if not billions, in building nice offices, nice workspaces. Will people come back to those places, or people will be happy working from home? I mean, that's the question which nobody knows yet. Let's see how that goes across.
Okay. I'll very quickly summarize what Venkatesh has told us till now. And after that, we'll take the questions that have been posted to us. Venkatesh told us that it is good to have a global career. It gives you a certain sense of perspective. It does not mean that having a career in India per se is not on, that there are opportunities to do a global career sitting right out in India. He said that if we choose to go to another country, it might actually be a good idea to pick up a qualification that is recognizable and relevant in that workplace. He talked about the importance of networking even ahead of picking up a job internationally. He also said that there are alignments that we have to make to the way that we conduct ourselves there, although we don't have to necessarily think that we are Class B citizens. I think most importantly, towards the fag end, he suggested to us that COVID, in a way, might change the way that we look at things. We may move away to working completely digitally, or in certain organizations which have actually built in the right kind of wonderful environment where it is home away from home, whether people will stay there. Venkatesh, you want to tell us something, one last statement, and then we'll pick up the questions that Ibrahim has collected from all the viewers here.
No, so you did a great summary of all the key points which we had discussed. I think I've really nothing more to add from what you mentioned.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh. And Ibrahim, we will spend another 15 minutes or 20 minutes on the question and answer.
Sure, sir. Yeah.
Can the viewers also now send in extra questions, or you have enough with you?
Yes, I have enough with me, sir. I think.
All right. Okay, please go ahead.
Well, I would just like to emphasize that the audience are enjoying the session. They have questions been pouring in from them from our YouTube channel, and they see value in it. So before I dive into the question answer session, I would just like to give a brief about the book Beyond 2020, 25 Happening Careers in Accounting and Finance. Well, this is a work of 8 aspiring professionals led by Pattabhi Ram. So what these people have done is they have researched on what are the top happening careers in accounting and finance. They have met with industry professionals. They have conducted expert interviews, and then they have done enough of research and dived into insights to come up with this 25 careers. And this book will be speaking about an introduction of a career, about education, skills, uh, you know, qualification, pay package, and the road ahead. So we plan to release this book in an ebook format and also audio podcast. Some of the chapters have been released on Spotify and Anchor, and the printed version will soon be released on through Notion Press as well. So look forward to hear from us through our social media channels, and let us now dive into the question answer session. So one of the participant has asked. Uh, is work from home in of relevance to a global career? Can I sit somewhere remotely in a village, and can I work for a foreign company, or can I pursue a global career?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. See, there are career is you can theoretically sit in a small village and do all the stuff which you have done in sitting in the city. There would be a few operational niggles like making sure you have good internet connection and all those kind of things. Let's assume those things are sorted out. But there are a few things which you would gain by going to an office. Main thing is the interaction with your colleagues in a more social way in terms of discussions outside work. Sorry. So those kind of social things are going to be difficult if you're going to be working in a distance in a city which is in a village is far away. And those things have substantial benefits. You would learn a lot from the physical interaction with your colleagues, and these things you really can't put down in a PDF or a PPT and learn. So I think that part will be missing. And there could be some regulatory aspects, not maybe for a software job, an IT job, where it's possible to do that. But there could be some jobs which are, the regulatory need to be in the same geography as where the origin is. So maybe you can't do it in different countries. Like, for example, can you sit in England and audit a company in India? I don't think those kind of things are there yet. So it needs a lot of things to evolve. So I'm not sure if it can be moved completely to that model.
Okay, Venkatesh. Yeah. So I think
just one point. I think there is already a beginning that has begun in terms of people sitting remote and doing audits. Your own firm where you did your articleship, I think, is already on that.
Within the same country, huh?
No, outside country. And many others are also doing. Documents get sent out. Especially, I'm not talking about EY. EY is one part which I know they do because you sit in one of those BPO companies for the data that is elsewhere to audit. And even today, if you're registered with PCAOAB, you don't necessarily fly to the US to do the audit. You could, but you can do sitting right here. And
right.
Of course, you have a point there in terms of how wholesome it would be. There would obviously, it would be to that extent definitely one run less.
Yeah. I was thinking also from, let's say, fund management sort of a career.
That there is
FCA or SEBI or multiple regulators involved. That could be.
Yeah, Ibrahim, can you go ahead?
There is an audience who says that he's interested into a career in stock market. Is it something relating to capital market, and what is that he needs to do in order to move forward?
Right. So capital markets is a very, very broad, arena of careers. And I think Pattabhi sir is making an attempt to split them into multiple sections in the book as well. So I think, first of all, you need to figure out which part of the capital markets you are interested in. They could be equity research, and even within research, it could be buy-side research or sell-side research. There could be investment banking. There could be asset management. There's so many divisions in it. So I think first level is to figure out which arm of this you're keen. If you're not sure about it, there would be large firms in India who would recruit people and typically put them through a rotation in different arms of the different parts of the business, and for about, let's say, a year or so. And at the end of the year, you can choose which one you would like to pursue. So even those options are there. What I've noticed is that a lot of recruitment here happens at a more entry or junior level. So if you want to do it fast and do it early. Let's say a person with 15 years experience would find it, the lateral movement is a bit more tricky from a non-capital market role to a capital market role. So I think it's better to start from the beginning in terms of getting into an internship or getting into a entry level job in one of these big firms, and then choose the line you want to focus.
Thank you. There's one more question. I think you will be the most appropriate person to answer that question.
Ibrahim, if you don't mind, if it is possible, can you read out the name of the individual also, the one who raised the question?
Yeah. There is a question from Sri Varaharan. Is immigration welcome in UK now? How is London as a finance center post-Brexit?
London has got a huge immigration for a long period of time. It's one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world, and there are restrictions on immigration, just like any other big country would have. And if you qualify those restrictions, I think there is nothing which doesn't welcome you. I mean, there are restrictions on how much you're earning, restrictions on qualifications, restrictions on whether that job can be fulfilled by a person doing it, fulfilled by somebody locally. So, I mean, if you meet those restrictions, there is absolutely no issue. But it's not that you can just pack up your bags and come here and start living. That doesn't exist. There was a scheme, I think, about 10 or 15 years ago when if you had a postgraduate degree, you could come here and search for a job. But those things are no longer there. But that's on the system, and the city itself is very welcoming immigration and migrants. So that's not an issue at all. After Brexit, I think the issue was more on people from Europe. I mean, the entire issue of Brexit was a free border between mainland Europe and the UK, when people could come in here and the local citizens believe their jobs are getting lost. And I think those people could be more impacted than someone from India or elsewhere.
Sure. There is an audience, Venkatesh, who say his name is Haren Arun. He asked how to improve networking when he would like to aspire for a global career.
So this is becoming more and more easy in today's day and age with things like LinkedIn, and we briefly spoke about this earlier. A lot of fairly well-known people have their profiles visible. You can reach out to them. You can contact them. I think you need to figure out what line you want to pursue and look for people in those options. So, I mean, if I think about it 20 years ago, it could have been so difficult to you won't even know where to start from. At least today we have, presence across different countries. So it's easier that way now.
Okay, Venkatesh, I'll just add on to what the questioner wanted to know. While today it is technically possible to reach out to a well-known person or a celebrity, how does one catch his attention? For example, somebody writes to you on LinkedIn, says, can you tell us what kind of career is investment banking or AMC, where to work? Would you really respond? Or what I'm trying to ask is, how do I make sure that I can connect with you?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I mean, a person needs to do a bit of research before they connect with things. I mean, if someone just blankly sends a mail saying that, tell me what asset management is about, then obviously they're not going to get a response on that thing. But, if someone has done some research based on publicly available information and asked a more nuanced question saying that I know you look at this particular sector and I am in this particular position in my career, and my objective is this. And at some point of time, if there is something which you could refer to me, or if you could help me with this A, B, or C things, let me know. I mean, it's not that you're going to get a response immediately or get an answer immediately, but it at least makes an impression in this person's mind that, next sometimes something may come up. I would think, oh, this guy sent me an email. Let me ask him first. So I think you need to fire the arrows on different sides.
Absolutely. Good.
Nandini has been asking persistently to take up her question. She says, which is a better course, CA or CMA?
I'm sorry, Nandini, I'm not going to be in a position to answer this because I'm not aware of CMA in detail to comment that. Apologies. I can talk about CA, of course, but I don't know the merits of CMA.
Venkatesh, if it is okay, I'll try to quickly answer her. Shall I answer her?
Please, sir, please.
Yeah. If by CMA, she actually meant the CWA in India, which is how it's increasingly today being called. Whether you like it or don't like it, CA, in terms of its brand value, in terms of its recognition, is clearly one notch above. I've done both my CA and my CMA, so I think I have some liberty to make that statement. Having said that, today, once upon a time, people picked up CMA because there was no articleship attached to it. Today, even that advantage is gone. The advantage of doing a CMA is that it's more focused on the factory, whereas a CA is typically, I may not be 100% right, but CA is typically focused on audit, focused on law, etc. Whereas a CMA is more focused on management accounting, how you will work in a manufacturing setup, what kind of reductions can you do in a service sector, improvements that you can make it there. So depending upon what your objectives are, what stage in life you currently are, what is your age, etc., you will have to make a choice between doing a CA or a CMA.
Yeah, her question was actually based on CMA from India only. So
Okay.
hopefully we have addressed the question correctly. Okay, the next question comes from, Gautam Tota. He's saying, future recruitment, will it be qualification driven or skill driven?
Well, qualification needs to be a sort of a barrier, right? I mean, a person may have the great skill, but how does a recruiter know that skill has been adequately interpreted by him? I think qualification needs to be the particular barrier to go on to the rest of the skill building process. I mean, you would always hear big stories about people who are college dropouts and build this multi-billion-dollar businesses, but these probably are the exceptions rather than the norms. I think you need to have the bare qualification first, and then after that, it's the skill you build up.
Nice, Venkatesh. In continuation to this question, there is a question from one of the audience named Harris. He says that he is 34 years old now. He couldn't complete his CA, and he is looking for some guidance as to what other qualifications or skills he can pick up so that he can carve his career globally.
Right. So it again comes back to what we have been discussing for a while in terms of there are multiple options to work globally. So try to figure out which country, which line, which it's preferable. There are, once you figure out that, you can either apply for these jobs directly to these companies outside, or most of these companies could have Indian firms where you can apply and get onto that. But in terms of qualification, it's very relevant to what you want to pursue. If you want to pursue a career in investment, maybe a CFA could be useful. If you're not sure what you want to pursue, a MBA could be useful, where it gives you a breadth of exposure. And at the age of 34 or so, there are a lot of universities which take people with experience. MBAs for people with a 10-15 year experience, where your peer group would be very well qualified in terms of multiple industries. So that could also be an option where you could figure out, you go to do MBA, widen your horizons, and then choose some path outside what you want to do. There are a few countries which also offer work based on immigration. something like Canada, which gives you immigration on based on certain norms, which is relatively easier. But I'm not very well qualified or equipped to give a solution on that.
Venkatesh. Yeah, nice going. I mean, audience are enjoying the session. I think the kind of questions which have been pouring in says that they are looking for more and more from this webinar. One more question is it MBA or CFA for a global career? This is coming from Ravi Ujji.
It depends on where you're doing your MBA from. CFA is obviously the same across all countries in terms of what is expected from a person clearing a CFA, but MBA could be very different based on which university you're doing it from. So I would, so if you're doing an MBA from a tier 1 university, probably you don't need a CFA for a global career. So in my own case, I didn't do a CFA subsequent to my MBA, but MBA from a tier 2 or tier 3 university, you could pursue a CFA and look for that option.
Okay. And we'll take few more questions in the interest of the audience. There is a question from Vigneshwaran. He's a cost accountant with 6 years of experience, and he has 2 years of pre-qualification experience from a corporate. Now he wants to know what are the routes, various routes and ways in which he can, get a career abroad or basically a job opportunity abroad.
Sorry, could you just repeat his experience? I missed that part.
He has around 6 years of post-qualification experience as a cost accountant and 2 years of pre-qualification in a corporate.
Right.
So he's now looking, for a way in which he can land a job abroad. What are the various routes through which he can approach for a job abroad?
Right. I mean, I really have nothing more to offer than what we've been discussing in terms of the different routes, but depends on which kind of corporate he's working on, working currently. If the corporate has got some offices elsewhere, that could be the most straightforward path I can think of right here. Yeah. Otherwise, the usual things of look for additional qualification or do your networking, right?
I think probably looking
Ibrahim,
for an answer. Yeah.
Ibrahim, just 1 second. You yourself have worked extensively in the Middle East. Maybe you might like to tell him what he can do to land up in the Middle East today.
Yes, sure, sir. I think the first best way is to look for the recruitment agencies who are hiring for job opportunities abroad. Then you can look within your network who are already working in foreign countries, and then you can join some clubs, like there are some CXO clubs, there are some entrepreneurship clubs. So, and then some of the other social and leadership networking platforms like Toastmasters or any other international platform, which can give you an opportunity to network and interact with people from across segments and across industries, through which you can get an impression and then you can pursue for a job abroad.
Ibrahim, we'll take a couple of more questions and then maybe we can close out.
Yes, sure. There is Naveen Kumar Tomandra. He says that how to get a job in JP Morgan as an investment banker.
It's a very specific question. Does he also know which city, which department? Anything else? No, I mean, I think it's very difficult to start your search depending on which company and, to have this sort of a focus. I think build a career for what line you want to do and just be open to opportunities which come up your line. So he wants to be an investment banker. Understand what investment bankers do. A lot of CAs do join investment banking, and even within investment banking, there are multiple subparts. There are a lot of big firms in India, like let's say Edelweiss or JM Financial, India Kotak Bank, which have pretty large investment banking teams, and they do recruit from different organizations, both at a slightly more lateral level, but also at the entry level as well. And JP Morgan, I'm not sure how large a team would be, but I would think it's probably easier to be getting there with some experience in terms of working in a different firm for a few years. So maybe find a stepping stone where you can learn the tricks of the trade, learn what is investment banking all about, and then eventually move to the multinational ones. I mean, not just JP Morgan, but the entire group of, let's say, Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse or all the large firms as well.
Sure. I think there is a question from one of the senior most person. His name is Damodaran Pagadala. He says, being CEO of a UK-based company, how to see the future in accounting and financial reporting? This is the first question. And the second question is, would COVID-19 pandemic affect outsourcing services across globally?
Sorry, the first question was, how would you see the future of accounting?
Finance and financial reporting.
I mean,
accounting and financial reporting. Yeah.
I mean, as long as there are companies which exist, then you would need financial statements to be prepared, and you need people to vet their financial statements and audit it. And this entire ecosystem of jobs around it would exist, and I would think would continue. Maybe how you do it would change and evolve over time, like what we are mentioning about more digital, more offline, online sort of process. But the entire process, I mean, ultimately, you need to understand how a company is functioning, for which you need financial statements, and financial reporting would obviously play a strong role. Whether as a career, I'm not sure if that was the question. Whether it will continue to be an exciting career or not. The thing is, there are more and more options which are coming up nowadays. Let's say fintech firms are getting large in UK. What I see is a number of people I know work in fintech startups in UK, which is probably more exciting a role than financial reporting role. And not just fintechs, but also large tech companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google. They also have a lot of projects coming up in the finance side where people from the finance background work. So I think they have today financial reporting competes with a lot of other alternate career options. I'm not sure if that was a question which was intended.
Yes.
I'll just add to what Venkatesh said. I think sometime yesterday or this morning, somebody told me that companies are like cricket matches. As long as there are cricket matches, there'll be scorekeepers, namely the accountants. As long as there are cricket matches, there'll be umpires, there'll be the auditors. So as long as, like Venkatesh very rightly put out, as long as there are business, there'll be scorekeepers, there will be umpires. Who will keep the score, how they'll keep the score, who will be the umpire, how they will do the job of umpiring would obviously have to be a battle between man and the machine. That I think is relevant. The second important thing is that do these careers survive? My own sense is that one has to be nimble. That means as in management, people talk about a S curve, a product life cycle. Even in careers, that can happen. Something on which you are specializing might go up to its maturity phase and start declining. You will survive if you're able to pick onto the next curve, if you're able to pick on to the next rising star. So there's a lot of need to be updated. One last question I would want to ask Venkatesh, and then Ibrahim, you can possibly close out. Venkatesh, very personal question. Will you come back to India?
I don't know yet, but I can see a lot of merits in coming to India, because that's ultimately that's home.
No political answer. No political answer. Very direct. Coming back to India? If yes, when, how? What should we do?
I think that whether coming back or not is an easier question. When and how is the more difficult one. Whether coming back to India, yes. When and how, I think it has to be open to, at this point, open to how career opportunities pan out. And it's probably easier in my role, because even sitting in London, I'm working on an India fund. So, it makes a logical sense that way. But as long as, but I don't need to move to India for the sake of moving to India, rather than for the sake of other reasons like career or personal reasons.
Absolutely. So, Ibrahim, you can move on to making the closing remarks. I think we are close to time.
I mean, we are thankful to the expert and anchor who have given a wonderful session. I'm sure the audience have now enriched information on how to prepare for a global career. We will be definitely sharing the recording of this video on our YouTube channel. Then we would like to obtain feedback from you as to how good we were or what are the areas we can improve upon so that we can give a better webinar for you in our upcoming webinars. And with this, I would like to just remind again, on the upcoming webinar. So please like, share, and subscribe and follow us on our YouTube channels. And please do not forget to register on the webinar link given below. Thank you all. Thank you, audience, for being a wonderful audience, being lively, interactive, and sociable with your questions. And once again, thank you to the expert Venkatesh Sanjeevi and to our anchor Pattabhi Ram. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.